Piki mai, kaki mai, jump on board. This is Otago Access Radio. Ko Ian Telfer toku ingoa. I'm your host Ian Telfer and welcome to episode 3 of a little series that we're calling Rattling the Chains. It's all about the Mayoral contest here in Dunedin. We have 14 candidates this year, so we're getting through them all in the studio over the next 5 weeks, and you can find out then what they're made of and what they stand for. Tonight we're going to go a little bit longer because we've got 3 contenders in the studio, so we're going to stretch to 45 minutes. So settle in, relax, and let's meet them. Former radio host, now a Green candidate and a 2-term city councillor, Aaron Hawkins.
Kia ora, Ian. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'll put your mic on. Fantastic. Golf professional and also 2-term councillor, Andrew Whiley.
Thanks, Ian. Good to be here.
Great. Warm welcome to you. And also a very warm welcome to Richard Seager, who is a small businessman who's done a lot of geography. And hello, Richard, and thanks for joining in.
Okay, all right, Brendan. Thank you.
How's the campaign going, gentlemen? Has it started yet?
Well, this is it. This is sort of first out of the blocks for us, although you could argue it started about 3 years ago. But the formal proceedings kicking off here at Otago Access Radio.
That's as it should be. Is there going to be a lot to do? How busy is a campaign like this, Andrew?
Well, I think right now I've got 5 or 6 different meetings booked into my diary. Where I've still got to put my signs up and get a lot of those things underway. But yeah, no, the next probably 5 weeks is quite a hectic pace because you've got a lot of emails, a lot of things to catch up on and stay ahead of. And it's going to be a very interesting campaign.
Aaron, you have got a shop front. Is that a new thing?
Yeah, we've rented office space in Moray Place for the campaign. The rules around using council buildings for campaigning out of are reasonably clear, so it became quite difficult to manage those. So yes, we were working out of Moray Place for the duration of the campaign.
Interesting. Is that a new thing to do? Like, did you have to think about it? It costs money, I guess, and gives you visibility. Why would you do that?
Yeah, it's about having space to work from. It's about having space for volunteers to meet and to have meetings in. Previously, we had a branch office in Dunedin that we were using, but the local branch doesn't have office space, so we rented this for the campaign, and it's beautifully sunny in the mornings.
Campaign headquarters, all right. Andrew, any plans for a shop front?
No, we're not
working from home.
No, well, combination of that, but we'll be quite visible out and about the community.
Yeah, Richard, have you stood for things before, or is this all new territory for you?
No, this is new territory for myself. Yeah.
Wow. So, what caught your interest? Why?
I thought it was a good opportunity to push some climate change adaptation, to push public transport into Dunedin, because I don't think Dunedin's very well serviced with public transport, and to just talk about climate change issues, basically.
So you're using it as a bit of a platform to raise issues that you think need to be discussed?
No, I'd be very happy to be on council or be the mayor in the future, but yes, that's also one of my... I want to be able to push those things.
Interesting. You haven't been on council before, so
no.
It's got to be a bit of a long shot, I guess. Is it going straight to mayor?
Oh, absolutely. It's a long shot, yes.
But you want to put aside weeks of your life to be out in the public gaze? Well,
I think the problem is that the world is not adapting to climate change. I mean, back in 1991 or 1990, when the first conference was held, we were putting out about 22 gigatons of CO2 per year on the world stage, and now we're putting out probably over 40, maybe even close to 50 gigatons a year. We haven't done anything in that time frame. And so I thought maybe it's time to push some other ideas about how to do this.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I think we're going to touch on the substantive issue a little bit later, but I guess I would note that it's a bit of a different election campaign, this one, isn't it? Election campaigns don't always, I think, change the public mind, but it feels like this one, I don't know what you think, feels like this one might. Maybe there's no obvious front runner, or maybe it all seems very fluid. How do you see it, guys?
Well, I think the key thing is there's some really good candidates put their hand up. And I think on top of that, there's going to be a number of issues that come to the table. And I think when you seriously look at it, mostly it's going to come from the incumbents that will be front and centre of the campaign.
The councillors now.
The councillors now. And I think from there on, it's going to be a number of issues that are going to pop up, and I think it's going to be really up to the community to judge who is going to be the best leader going forward.
Yeah. How do you read the campaign so far, Aaron?
Well, I think the campaign is a referendum on the direction that council has been heading in, and there are a number of candidates who are broadly supportive of that direction, myself included. But I'm the only candidate who has consistently demonstrated an ability to work positively with staff, and we've seen this morning how important that is, and build broad political support to make progress on the issues that are important to our community. And I think that is the pitch that I'm making. The only candidate who has consistently worked constructively with both elected members and staff to make progress on the issues that matter to our community, and that's what we need to maintain the momentum that we've built up in recent years.
What do you think that means? Is it with 14 candidates, how do you cut through?
I think it's focusing on the big issues that we are dealing with, which are around transport and housing and our natural environment. And I've got a plan for tackling those issues, but also a strong track record as a councillor of getting the political support required to make those things a reality, because any candidate can promise you the earth, but unless they can demonstrate how they are going to get the 8 votes you need in a council chamber to progress their policy or budget decisions, then it's all a bit meaningless.
All right. Oh, well, we'll test you out on some of that soon. Let's go to a bit of a biographical quiz. I got 3 minutes on the timer this week. Normally it was 2 minutes, but it's 3 of you, so I think it's fair. Here we go. We're going to do short, quick answers, quick fire, just to get a bit of who you are, I guess, out on the table. All right, you ready? 3 minutes starts now. Your full name, Richard.
Richard Owen Seager.
Andrew Peter Whiley.
Aaron Garth Hawkins.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Waikato and Bay of Plenty.
Wellington.
In and around Invercargill and rural Southland.
Yeah, no one's from Dunedin. Oh, interesting. All right. What did you want to be when you grew up, Richard?
Probably a scientist originally.
Oh, you got close?
Yep.
All right.
I did.
Airline pilot.
You didn't get close.
Glasses in Form 3 sort of squashed that.
Yes, got it.
The first dream job I remember having as a Weet-Bix maker.
Right. Did you get there?
No. Still a big fan, though.
Still a big fan. Awesome. Still time, too. The mountain you most identify with, Richard?
Mountain I most identify with probably have to be Pukeatua, which is where I grew up.
When you grew up? Yeah.
Yes.
Andrew?
Oh, that's a tough one. Probably the mountains in central North Island. Vividly remember when one of them, the volcano erupted.
Ruapehu.
And the Ruapehu went over as the golf pro at Wanganui. So.
Excellent. Yeah, interesting.
These days I'd probably say Hereweka Harbour Cone.
Yeah. Okay, nice. In public ownership.
Indeed.
All right. Favourite place in Dunedin, Aaron? Maybe the same.
The Portsider.
Portsider, the pub.
Yeah.
Nice.
Lawyer's Head.
Lawyer's Head.
Targo Peninsula.
Yep. Nice. All right. Favourite sport to play? You can start, Andrew.
Golf.
Yeah, golf. Least favourite sport, Andrew?
Rugby, because I got pummeled in Form 3 by a lot of bigger boys.
Nice. Richard?
I played tennis. I played rugby when I was younger as well, but tennis is my favourite sport.
Least favourite?
Least favourite? I don't think I really have a least favourite sport.
Democratic, all right. Aaron?
Well, at the moment, in our hallway, football, rugby and cricket are dominating with the 3-year-old,
Nice.
usually in quite rapid succession.
Bad for the hallway, though.
Terrible for the hallway.
And least favourite?
Oh, I don't have any. I'm a sports tragic from way back.
Okay.
And bring on the Olympics.
All of them. All right, fine. Right. Favourite newspaper, Richard?
Oh, you'd have to say the Otago Daily Times, but I quite like Le Monde and the Independent and the Guardian in the UK as well.
Broad tastes. Andrew?
Otago Daily Times, but you know what? I really enjoy the Star.
Yeah, I'd be a toss-up between the Star and the Guardian too, for very different reasons.
They don't normally go together, but it's good. Awesome. All right. Imagine that you got yourself mugged in the street. Would you fight or flight?
Oh, it depends who was mugging.
Oh, okay. Depends how big they are. Andrew?
I'd probably run first and...
Aaron?
Yeah, I'm a pacifist too.
Oh, nice. All right. Three words to describe yourself on the buzzer. There you go. Richard?
I wrote these down.
Excellent.
I was kind of expecting that. Open-minded, resourceful and dedicated.
Nice. Andrew?
Hard-working, honest and reliable.
Aaron?
Hard-working, fair and curious.
Thank you all. Awesome. All right. Richard, I think that we know the least about you because you haven't been in public life until now. Do you want to just give us a little background? Like, how did you get here?
Well, I came to Dunedin in 2011, I think it was, because we wanted to expand our small business at the time into the World Wide Web, the internet. So I did a little bit of computer science and info science. And I've always been also interested in climate science. So at the end of that, I also had a little bit of postgrad geography and did that. But we like Dunedin. My wife's here now. She's originally from Melbourne. My daughter went to Columbia College. She finished up last year and she's going to go to Otago University next year. She's planning on doing architecture. What else can I say? I play for Balmacewen Tennis Club, so the guys up there know me.
And you said, though, that you had some small business background. So what sort of businesses were you in?
We're just in gifts.
Right.
Unfortunately, it went down a few years ago. Well,
gift shop you had?
Yeah, we had a gift shop in Melbourne. Yeah.
Right. But it didn't survive?
Been there for 20 years, but we ran into multiple problems in 2013 through to 2015, maybe even a little bit earlier than that. And you sort of needed to juggle a bit to keep it going, and I didn't manage to keep doing that. So.
Right. And it was at that point that you came back here, was it? And then you picked up the study?
Well, about 6 months here and 6 months in Melbourne. So I haven't had to do that for the last few years. Concentrated on tidying up those affairs and trying to move on from that.
Right. And the studies then, that was kind of an interest that grew, was it? Or
I've always been interested in that sort of thing, reading the Reader's Digest stories on pollution back in the 1970s and so on. So yeah, I've definitely always been interested in that. And I was getting into debates online about climate change, and I just wanted to learn a little bit more about it. So I headed off to the geography department and said I want to do some postgrad geography, and happily they let me do it. Although running a small business and doing postgrad geography is quite difficult. So, it wasn't easy.
Do you think this is the climate change election? Is that the biggest issue?
It definitely should be the climate change election. We really do have a problem here. The only way to stop really bad climate change from happening now is stop using oil, gas and coal. We need to do that almost immediately, and we even may need to get into negative emissions if we don't stop very, very, very soon. So,
and you say that why? Because of the impact on Dunedin, or are you thinking globally?
Globally, but the impact on Dunedin is going to be quite strong as well. I mean, both South Dunedin and the Taieri Plain are pretty low to the ground as far as sea level goes.
So you're worried about sea level rise?
Sea level rise, also climate change can impact on the type of crops that can be grown and rainfall and all that sort of thing. You're going to get stronger storms. I mean, sea level rise is about 4 millimetres a year, probably off the Otago coast at the moment, but the wave heights will be increasing more than that off the Oregon coast, for example. There's a guy with Gerio, I think his name was saying that the wave heights were increasing by about 15 millimetres a year. Yeah. So we may be more concerned about wave heights in the future rather than just sea level rise.
Right. Andrew, what's your take on this? You've been representing Progress Dunedin, but I'm not exactly clear on how you stand on climate change. So what's your position?
Well, I grew up in a family. Well, I've got an 18-year-old and 21-year-old. And I don't think there's a day go past when we're sitting around the dinner table where it doesn't become a topic of conversation.
Yeah. It's on the minds of young people, isn't it?
Yeah. And you can't watch 6 o'clock news without seeing it. You can't pick up a newspaper without seeing it. You know what? When we moved back to New Zealand in 2003, we wanted a better life for our family, and that's exactly what we found here in Dunedin. And it's important to continue on that pathway. And I go back and I keep focusing on actually every family in Dunedin is adapting to a lot of changes and actually making themselves a lot more climate friendly. Right. And I think that's a great pathway.
So do you subscribe to the broadly climate change is happening, climate change is caused by carbon dioxide,
no, totally.
Have you got any doubts? No.
I totally support climate is changing and and there are carbon issues, not a problem. Yeah.
But you've run into people, activists, sometimes because of your stance on gas.
I get called that from certain councillors around the table that I'm a climate change denier. And that really grates me because again, I'm really focused on my son and daughter and what lives they're going to have, and around the wider globe. You know, that's the problem that I find. Here I am promoting pro-gas Otago, and it's natural gas that everybody's looking for off our coast. And I just look at that, and go, if we can take out, you know, China wants to build 200 to 300 coal-powered energy plants. And if natural gas was discovered off our coast, how much would that improve their economy? How much would that improve their carbon emissions? We can do something a lot bigger than just for Dunedin. We can do something huge for the world.
Yeah, so you see it as a useful end game or as a useful transition fuel, or how do you see the gas?
A classic is our Dunedin Hospital. Currently that's fuelled by coal. Now the first thing I'd love to see is get the hospital off coal and onto natural gas. To me that's a big plus.
Interesting, cool. How do you see it, Aaron? And do you,
it gets better than that. The hospital will be powered by wood chip, so we can skip straight to the renewable resource. But I think you're right, Ian. This is an election about climate change. I stood for mayor 3 years ago solely for the purpose of making sure that people were talking about climate change at every single public meeting. Now, that is no longer an issue because this is a mainstream discussion. Too late, probably, and Richard would agree with me, but that's where we're at. And so I think the focus needs to be on what we are going to do about it, which is why I'm proud to be part of a council that had not just declared a climate emergency, because that's hollow in and of itself, but brought forward our goal for being zero carbon to 2030, put an extra $1 million in the budget for the next 2 years to accelerate the work that we're doing, has a significant budget for dealing with the water issues around flooding, because we know that we're going to have more frequent and more intense extreme weather events. And I think, but what's remarkable about getting the broad support for all of those things that our council have done this year is that even I would not have dreamed about that happening 6 months ago. The reason that the political mood has shifted is because the public mood has demanded it. And we see that with thousands of young people marching in the streets demanding that their politicians do more. And I'm proud that we responded by doing. Are we doing enough? Probably not, but we're doing far more than we have, and we need to carry on down that path faster than we have been doing.
That's interesting. So you saw the pressure coming on directly from the public in that sense, or from young people?
Totally.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you felt it. Did you feel that too, Andrew? I mean, what was your sense of where the council ended up on this? Were you comfortable? Were you uncomfortable?
Well, I voted against the climate emergency.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I actually think we've got other issues that are more pressing, like housing emergency in our city. When I look at, I supported the 1.1 million that Aaron was just talking about, investment and for the next 2 years of council actually investigating better ways of climate adaptation and things like that. And I also have supported other climate change papers that have come through. The big thing is we really have to really focus, and we're elected to represent Dunedin. We're representing the ratepayers of Dunedin, and that is actually, let's focus on issues of South Dunedin and what's important to the ratepayers of Dunedin. I think sometimes we get out of bounds and we go, we focus more on what's happening nationally and globally.
Yeah, that's interesting. Richard, do you think the council's been doing enough? How do you read that as the outsider?
No, absolutely not. But then nobody has been doing enough, not anywhere on this planet. So I think we just need to move fast. I think Dunedin can do very well here because, there's a few cities in the Netherlands, for example, where cycles are becoming much more prominent. Groningen, I can't really pronounce that because it's got a Dutch guttural sort of thing there. And another place called Nijmegen, which actually won the 2016 Dutch cycle thing. So I think we can get cycles going a hell of a lot more here in Dunedin. We can also get public transport going here. Trams cost about 13-14 million euros a kilometre. But considering that we probably spent about $1.3 billion just in Dunedin on road support, that includes roads, cars, the hospitals, which is about $4 billion a year in New Zealand. And the roads themselves attract about $5.5 billion a year. So when you're talking, last week you had, I can't remember who it was. It was
Carmen or Jim? Yeah.
Jim, yeah.
Jim O'Malley,
sorry,
yeah. Yep.
Jim O'Malley. He mentioned that Wellington Airport was getting $2 billion, I believe, to get the train out there. I think that's a waste of time because Wellington Airport sits right next to sea level. So I wouldn't be spending $2 billion on that sort of infrastructure, nor would I be spending whatever it's going to cost to build the hospital at 1 metre sea level here in Dunedin either.
Interesting. Yeah, you mentioned transport. Here's a funny thing. When you look at the residents' opinion survey, I looked at the last residents' opinion survey, the number one issue on the public mind there was not climate change, but it was the quality of the roads. Number two was parking issues. Number three then, after that, somewhere along the line was, okay, we're worried about, South Dunedin or something like that. Is there a disconnect there or what?
Yeah, I think there should be a lot more parking for bicycles. These places in the Netherlands have places for up to 10,000 bicycles at the train station, for example. Yeah. We could do something similar. I mean, you could basically make the university precinct a cycle-only area right now.
So you want to see a real ramp up in the cycle,
Absolutely.
And yet it's been very controversial in Dunedin. Every time
it was controversial in the Netherlands as well. It was very controversial in the Netherlands. You had shopkeepers painting signs on their windows saying that and now they support it. You've got.
You think it's just change? It takes time.
It just changes. It changes. Yeah, you've got to push it through, and then it changes.
Yeah, Andrew, how do you see transport issues? Because as I say, I mean, this seems like the residents are unhappy with the parking and the roads. What's that about?
My whole theme of the campaign is get Dunedin moving. And a big part of that is actually get Dunedin moving. There is a big problem with people understanding what's going to happen to our roads in Dunedin, and trying to find a park in this city is crazy. I can tell you about a business that was based at Meridian Mall. They're moving to Vogel Street. They had 12 car parks with their business at Meridian Mall. They're keeping those 12 car parks at Meridian Mall while they're moving across to Vogel Street because they can't find anything closer. It's absolutely crazy when you talk to a lot of people around town, and I mean a lot of people. I keep getting hammered on there's a lack of parking, there's no parks, they're gone. But also there's been an increase in cars. I heard today on another radio station 70,000 cars were registered in New Zealand last year. Now a good chunk of them we've had good growth in Dunedin. We got a lot more cars in Dunedin than we did 3 years ago.
Well, you've been on council for 6 years. I mean, have you not been part of formulating a parking policy? What's driving this?
Unfortunately, I've been on the minority side of the table on some of those issues. And the other side of that is actually, in fact, twice council has supported completely, all 15 of us have supported developments where parking was going to be involved of a new development. And unfortunately, neither of those projects have gone ahead. The key issue is we do need a new parking building in town. We do need to improve parking, but all we seem to be doing is with the cycleways, we took away a lot of parks, reallocating them, moving them around, and that's actually just not working for our residents.
Aaron, how do you see this?
Well, Andrew's right. We have a growing population and therefore a growing vehicle fleet and also a growing expectation among people in the city to be able to bike around the city without fear of death or serious injury. And so all of those things put pressure on what your parking resource is. But parking is a scarce resource and we need to think of it like that in the way that it can't just expand ever out to accommodate. It's called induced demand. In the same way that adding lanes to a motorway doesn't fix congestion in anything other than the very short term. So the idea is making alternatives for those who are lucky enough to be able to use them. So safer walking and cycling, ideally your public transport should be free, but certainly making it more affordable takes the pressure off people needing to park in the centre city. If you want to support parking initiatives, the greatest thing you could do would be support us to make our bus service cheaper and to invest in cycling and walking. And then we can allocate the space that we have according to the priority of needs. And that's particularly around people who have mobility challenges or accessibility challenges.
I agree that there's a push on, but the council's actively taken parkings out over the last 6 years, hasn't it? So has that been the right thing to do, or is it in retrospect been a mistake?
No, I wouldn't agree that it's stripping parking out. A lot of them have been reallocated.
What does reallocated mean?
Well, in terms of how long you can stay in a park, for example, to meet the changing nature of what is happening in that area. And so that's a constant. We've
definitely
struggle.
lost them with bike lanes on the state highway. marketplace. We've definitely lost them on some of the side streets.
Right, so they're not in all of the same places that they used to be, but there's still a considerable parking resource in the centre city. But, I mean, the problem with parking is that everyone's got an opinion, but the plural of opinion isn't data. And so what council have done is we're updating the last survey we did around car parking in the centre city was in 2016. That work is currently being updated, which will better inform, what a future plan might be, as opposed to going off and, talking
in
about
the end, though, do you think that there are enough parks and it's just a resource that we're going to manage better?
Yes.
Right.
And it's quite interesting now that I have a centre city office, seeing a considerable number of people parking directly outside where they need to go and going in, whether it's to a cafe or to the florist or for short trips. The churn in that neighbourhood is significant, and we are told that is impossible, and that it's the death of retail because of what we're doing with car parking. That doesn't seem to be borne out by what we're seeing.
All right. Pause for a sec. 5:25, and you're on OAR FM, and this is Rattling the Chains. And with me, I've got three mayoral contenders: Richard Seager, Andrew Whiley, and Aaron Hawkins. And we're talking about the big issues facing this election. All right, well, we've done some of that. I guess the issue is that public transport has come up a few times from different people, and I guess my question would be, what's the vision for public transport in this city? Is it just more buses? Is it better buses? Is it something more radical than that? Is it light rail? Is it what's the end game here? Do you want to start, Richard?
Yeah, I'd like to see some. I mean, Dunedin had light rail 80 years ago. There's a tram up to Mornington. There's a tram up to Roslyn. There's one out to St Clair. I would like to see a tram all the way from the North East Valley out to St Clair. I think that would be a good start. As I said, that's going to cost about. It's not cheap. It's
I bet it's not cheap.
But at the same time, it's cheaper.
But
than
the cable car, just to bring the cable car back on High Street, they're talking about $23 million. I mean, can we afford this as a city?
$1.3 billion a year has been in Dunedin to support cars. I mean, this is a really small amount if you're saying $23 million. I mean, you need to put money into public transport. You can't expect it to compete with roads if you don't. I'd also like to add that as a cyclist, I cycled here today as well, by the way, it's quite difficult on some of the roads around Dunedin, and you can't get from one place to another without running into dangerous intersections and so on.
Right, so even with some of these bike paths that have been put in, the connections aren't there?
There's some really good bike paths here at the moment, but the one along the harbour there's probably the best one, but it's not useful for me, for example, if I'm coming
depending where you want to go.
Yeah, exactly.
The same with true with buses though, isn't it? I mean, they're all right when you're going the right direction in the right place, but if you want to go across town, if I want to go to Roslyn from North East Valley, I've got to take two buses or three. So where are we, Andrew, and what's your vision for transport?
Well, the first thing has been a huge disconnect in the whole bus system in the sense of the ORC running the bus system versus the DCC. My first goal is actually...
You want to get it back?
No, I actually don't want to get it back. I actually think, unless we go to Parliament and change the legislation, that's the process.
Or you have to convince them to delegate it to you.
Well, I actually think if you got a group of 3 councillors and the CEO and the mayor, along with their chair, CEO and 3 of their councillors, and we actually formed a really effective working party that actually said, okay, what is in the best interest of our city for public transport? The first thing you've got to have is you've got to have public transport that works. And that is a case of, not going up to a bus stop and then wondering and standing there for the next 10 minutes. Have I missed the bus? Is the bus still coming? What's going on?
So is that about frequency or is that about information?
Well, it's about information, and they're starting to put tracker bus into an application into the buses. But they've been talking about for that 5 or 6 years. I think the ORC have been really slow in doing that. I know the amount of times my kids would come back from the bus stop and it would be ineffective. The part being is, yes, public transport's going to be a big part of our city going forward. But I tell you what, you talk to the mums dropping their kids off on the way to school, things like that. People have lives, and it's not a case of, okay, I'm going to go to the bus stop at 8:15, I'm going to be at work at 8:45, and I'm going to get the bus now at 5:15, I'm going to get home at 5:45. Life doesn't function like that anymore,
right.
And that's the hardest part. We have to be adaptable.
Aaron, what's the vision? What's the end game?
Well, public transport should be free. That's ultimately the end game. The transport network is one of our greatest opportunities in terms of transitioning to a low-carbon economy, and public transport has to be a part of that. The ORC currently can't delegate the operation of the service to us by law. It has to be run by regional government. So
is that okay?
No, it's incredibly short-sighted. It makes sense in regions where the network crosses different territorial authorities, like Wellington, but not here, where it's essentially contained within within
One
Queenstown
city.
or Dunedin.
Right.
So until we deal with that problem, because we talk about car parking earlier, public transport, cycle lanes, that's an integrated transport network that one authority is in control of all of the different moving parts of, and they all do interact
So
with
to
each
work
other.
well, it has to all be connected.
Absolutely, but also there's a democratic issue in that, of the 12 Otago regional councillors, only 6 represent Dunedin. So even if you got all 6 of them to support greater investment in our public transport network, that's not enough votes to get the ORC to do it. It doesn't make sense that Michael Laws has more of an influence over Dunedin's public transport system than anyone in this room does.
I'm sure he's chuffed, but what will he do with it? That's the question, right?
Well, we've seen what they're doing with it. Not enough. I mean,
Well, they're doing some, aren't they? I mean,
it
it has come forward.
gotten better. It has gotten better, but
We've
it's
got a
not.
bus hub. We've got a
Right.
better ticketing system.
They've underinvested.
Yeah,
And you still feel that's underinvested.
Oh, yeah.
And fundamentally, it's too expensive. I mean, we've got families in this community who can't access council facilities because it is too expensive.
Well, you
to be
get
able to
what you pay for, right? So in this case, is it a question of the regional council being forced to spend more? That is, take more from us and spend more on the buses. Is that what you're saying?
Both local government and central government need to invest more in public transport to make it accessible to everyone in our community.
And what does it look like in the end? Is it more buses? Is it something else?
Yeah, greater frequency, greater efficiency. If you're talking about what alternative modes of transport.
Well, I wonder why ferries across the harbour. I wonder why not.
Oh, sure. Well, nostalgia's no way to plan a transport network.
Yeah, I'm not nostalgic. I'd like to see a Manly ferry all the way down.
Yeah, I don't think a ferry is nostalgic at all. In fact, I sort of thought maybe a gondola across the harbour would be an idea as well.
Hovercraft.
I think we need to take any alternative seriously, but it needs to prove its worth as over and above making the system that we currently have more efficient.
How would you rank them? At the moment we've got buses. Will they still be pinnacle of the system, or do you think there are other things that would be better?
Well, nothing else has proven itself to be a more efficient way of delivering what we need to deliver. So I think in any future work, and we've seen this with the retrofitting of the City Rail Loop in Auckland as an extreme example, but any light rail network would be years away, and we've got a decade or so to make the transition to a low carbon economy, and that means what we do in the next few years is incredibly important. So we can't wait for any future infrastructure development. We need to make the best fist of what we've currently got.
And if you were mayor, what would be the first thing you would do on this front?
Make our public transport more affordable.
How?
We've got a paper coming to our budget meeting in January. We have support from our community to do what Queenstown Lakes District Council have done and effectively subsidise the bus system.
So flat fares, $2, something like that.
All of those models are being looked at. Yeah. So that's the number one priority, and then work with the Transport Agency and central government to change the way that they are funding, because at the moment the public transport operating model actively works against making public transport cheaper, because it's not public transport, it's publicly funded private transport, and the operators have to make money out of that, and so it disincentivises making it as accessible as it needs to be.
Right. Andrew, what would be the first thing you would do on transport if you were mayor?
I'd be, and I've already done this too with the Polytech, look at the Polytech and also talk to the university and have every student contribute $100 per person, and that would give them a free bus pass throughout Dunedin, and also to the DCC facilities like Saltwater Pool and Moana Pool. That would generate, we got 25...
So there's a Dunedin card.
Dunedin card. So all of a sudden we've got 25,000, say, students, $100 a pop, 2.5 million. That generates a lot of income for the public bus service and to move forward with it. And I think from there, what also it does is actually gets our students out and about and moving around the city. It gets them in away from some of the, I wouldn't say... housing that's not quite adequate, and moving into other neighbourhoods and really exploring Dunedin.
What do you think, Richard? Dunedin card? Would it fly?
$100 wouldn't fly with most students.
$100? Too much?
For most students, I would say $100 is probably asking too much. Yeah.
What's the first thing you would do if you were mayor?
First thing I would do if I was mayor would start to block off the university to cars and other traffic, and make it a cycle precinct, and put some car parks on the edges of it. So
the whole campus.
The whole campus area. You need to talk to the central government about the road that goes right through the middle of it, or two actually.
Yes, I think. Also, it's a state highway.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to do something about that. There was a letter to the newspaper about a month ago suggesting that they could go take the road under. But you could take it around down behind Hounsburg.
That's a radical solution. So the idea, making it into more a cycle zone.
Well, you're not going to get people on their cycles if they think it's dangerous. I mean, and that's the case in most of Dunedin at the moment. Until you take that danger away from the cyclists, you won't get them on the cycles. And cycles and students would seem to me to go together really well. So you could start there and maybe I would want to expand it out in the city. I don't think you've got 1 billion cars on this planet at the moment. They take up probably more space than there's this graph on the internet somewhere where you've got sheep and cattle and how much weight they have on their footprint on the planet. Basically, I think cars probably have a larger footprint on the planet, and they're probably dirtier. Electric cars are not going to solve the problem as far as I'm concerned, because you're going to have big resources are not necessarily going to keep up with the batteries, for example, the cobalt and all that sort of material that you need for the batteries. I don't think electric cars are the answer.
You think they're too resource intensive?
Well, yeah,
that's interesting, because I guess I was assuming that they would work for Dunedin, because we have pretty cheap power. We have hydro. It's carbon neutral. And
in New Zealand, 767 cars per 1,000 people. In Southland and Canterbury, it's 900 cars per 1,000 people. In Dunedin, I'm not quite sure what it is, but I guess it's somewhere between Southland and Canterbury, so it's probably more than the 767.
Right. So we've got 100,000 cars, yeah.
If you extrapolated that out to the planet, you'd have 7 billion cars on the planet. So quite obviously, cars are not the answer. We need to start thinking about whether we actually need cars on this planet. Obviously, rural communities, that's the best solution for them, and small towns, but urban areas, I really don't think that we need to concentrate on cars. We should start moving away as fast as we can. An electric car still produces emissions in its manufacturing and its operation and so on. So we need to move. If it's 40% and you increase the number of cars on the planet to 3 billion instead of 1 billion, right, you've still got the same amount of emissions.
Yeah.
Do you want to comment there, Aaron?
Just picking up on that point. I mean, it's not carbon neutral. There's zero emissions at tailpipe, and that the fuel may be zero carbon.
You mean from hydro?
No, in terms of running the car.
But I see what you're saying, yes.
But we still have to build them, right?
Right.
And I think the fixation...
And dispose on the batteries and everything after.
And the fixation on the electric car is effectively trying to come up with a solution for our own... a vaccine for our own patterns of consumption and behaviour, rather than the systemic change we need, which is reducing the reliance on needing to drive around to get everywhere in the first place.
I take that point, but here's the thing. If you're a Dunedinite, a lot of people have moved to this town because of lifestyle, right? They value the lifestyle, and one of the things they value about it is being able to get across town in 10 minutes. Now, if you're going to move people from 10-minute city into 30-minute on the public transport city, that's not a jump up in your quality of life, that's a jump down, right? So how do you deal with that issue? You can't just tell people, sorry, your life is going to slow down.
Well, I think it depends on what the trade-off is. So people will be prepared to sacrifice a degree of convenience if it's made worthwhile for them to do so. So if it's free to take the bus, then all of a sudden maybe 30 minutes where you can work on the bus on the way in or listen to a podcast or whatever, versus 15, 20 minutes driving that you have to pay for, all of a sudden the value proposition of that changes markedly. So I think, but to be able to do that, we need to make it more attractive for people. I mean, for example, I live in Port Chalmers. If I come in and out every day, Monday to Friday, that's $44 a week to use public transport. So, if that's just for one person. If there were two of us working and travelling, that makes no economic sense to do that.
So, yeah, I see the incentives. You also need a much more frequent service than once every hour or two, right?
That's right, yeah.
I mean, Port Chalmers, you couldn't rely on it, could you?
You can make the public transport more convenient than cars, so that's quite possible. For example, in Groningen, that's exactly what they did. Right.
But that would be a pretty radical overhaul. Would it or not?
Well, it was
from where we are now.
It was a radical overhaul at one night in 1977, but they've benefited from that ever since.
Andrew, you want to get Dunedin moving? Is this the key?
No, it's not.
Free public transport?
Well, nothing's free. The ratepayers are going to pay for it. And if people want to see their rates go through the roof, that's a great way to do it. And again, that's why I went back and I've talked to someone at the Polytech high up, and they thought it was a great idea for the students to all contribute $100 and put it through in their student fees, and it would be an easy way to get them actually moving. The bottom line being is, again, a lot of people that are running around town parking their cars have lives they've got to get active with it. In the sense of what I mean, there's other stuff going on. And you can't just put people on the buses and say, this is going to solve your problem. We've got cycleways that actually don't work in the city, in my opinion. We've got a great dual-way cycleway along Portsmouth Drive. Richard said, that's one of the best ones working. Then we go and put 2 one-ways on around either side of the Cadbury building. It doesn't make sense. Good dual cycleways, take one of the lanes off, things like that. There's been no vision, there's been no planning. You talk to anybody around the city right now and say, okay, what's the city going to look like in 2040? We're building a new hospital. How am I going to get around the city? What are the buildings going to look like? The fear about what's going to happen between George Street and the hospital construction is real. People are really concerned. They saw what happened when the cycleway construction was and how long it took them. People, they want to get this. They want to stop fuming. They want to get moving. That's the key.
Mm-hmm. Do you think those cycleways work, Aaron? Like the ones on the one way? Do they work? Do they do the job?
They do
Are they
a
good
job.
enough?
Are they good enough? No. And council certainly pushed the transport agency to build.
Yeah, I appreciate that they weren't the council that built them, but they're pretty poor looking, and I've ridden them quite a few times, and they're really difficult to ride.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ducking and weaving and all over the place.
It's certainly far from ideal, but unfortunately they were determined to build compromise in at the design point because of the public pressure and the fear around, the
parking.
Human right to car parking,
right.
and so that is less than ideal. But it's the same. It's a network, right? So until all of the parts of the network connect up, you're never going to get the uptake in using that as you might see. But we're still seeing, it's gradual, but we're still seeing growth in use of that facility. But anybody who's tried to get from go on the one-way north through the Dunedin Botanic Garden into North East Valley, you might as well put up a sign with a man shrugging his shoulders going, "You're on your own from here, pal," because it doesn't connect. And until you make those connections so people can use it as a reliable and safe commuter asset, then it's never going to be as popular as it should be. But in spite of that, it is still growing in popularity, and I think that's testament to the fact that people in this community want to be able to use that option, and they want to be able to feel safe doing it. And until we make it safe for people to do it, they're not going to be able to.
There's a great Bicycle Dutch on YouTube. They're great guys to follow for any cycle paths.
All right.
There's a lot.
You think it would be relevant to us?
Well, yeah, because Dunedin's more.
Because there's 2 schools of thought on cycleways here. It was all a big mistake, and we should go back to having decent roads. Versus, we just need to do it a whole lot more and a whole lot better.
The climate change is not something that you can sort of just say, okay, let's put this off a little bit longer. There's no choice. Cycles are an integral part of future transport. Cars are not necessarily an integral part of future urban transport. They still are in rural areas, obviously.
Do you think the motorists are going to get used to cycles, Andrew?
No, I think, good cycle lanes work. We don't have good cycle lanes. And that's the key element for me. We could have a far better cycle infrastructure and it would work very effectively.
Is that something the council just needs to lead on, though?
Well, unfortunately we haven't, but also a lot of it is NZTA related. I think what you're going to see happen is when the Round the Harbour is completed, or even with Portobello to town is going to be finished, that's going to be unbelievable. It's going to get a lot of recreational cyclists. The key part that I learnt, a good friend of ours in Vancouver is a city planner and did a lot of the cycleway infrastructure in Vancouver. He said there's 2 things you've got to realise. A good cycleway system works great for commuters. A good recreational cycleway system works great for families and recreational users. The 2 cannot be combined. What we're trying to do a lot of times is combine the 2, and that's going to be a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
Interesting. All right, we're almost out of time. Can we just go back to the beginning and just talk about what's going to happen in this campaign? Andrew and Aaron, I think you came 4th and 5th the last couple of times.
Yeah,
what's different this time?
I was 4th, Aaron was 5th, yeah.
What's different?
I think both of us are 3 years more into it. And I think the biggest thing for me is, Dave is stepping down, so we don't have an incumbent. So we're actually really pushing our visions and where we want to see the city to grow.
Interesting. Aaron?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a close race.
Is it wide open?
It is wide open, but there are very distinct visions being put forward for the future of the city. Some stuck in the 20th century, others somewhere closer to where we need to be. And like I said, I'm running because I have a consistent track record of making progress and getting decisions over the line that invest in the future of this city, in the things that matter to our community. And that's what we need in a mayor, is someone who is able to demonstrate being able to generate political political support and community support for the direction that council is travelling in.
Yeah, that was a big pitch. All right, well, we better stop. Thank you so much to all of my three guests here, Andrew Whiley, Aaron Hawkins and Richard Seager. Thank you, gentlemen, and all the very best for your campaigns. Let's make it a fair and spirited race for all our sakes, and I think you have so far. So thank you.
Kia ora, Ian.
If you want to listen back to this program, then there'll be a podcast on the OAR FM website, oar.org.nz, and we're also videoing these. Dommy's doing a 3-camera shoot, and it's getting quite a lot of interest, actually. We had 1,500 views last week, so fantastic, keep it up. And you can also get it on the OAR FM Facebook page and on the YouTube channel. Now, next week, Lee Vandervis, Christine Gary, and Bob Barland. Plenty to talk about there. So see you 5 o'clock next Monday.